All right. All right, can you guys hear me now? Is that better? I think you can hear me now. Based on the signs. God damn it. I just did the whole here's the recap of the week and everything. Now my voice is gone. All right, we gotta do it again. So, recapping the week. Uh, Shoot. Okay, so I did lose a day. My computer didn't boot. I think we all saw that coming if you've seen the last couple streams. Uh, yeah, I had to replace the power, the heat sink. And also, side effect, I also kind of had to replace the video card because it melted from the heat sink not working. So, the audio was there at the beginning? Ugh. Oh, hey, Mashed Potato. I know who you are now. From Twitter. Hi. I did never clicked that you were the same person. Um, I like your game, by the way. That looks really cool. I'm gonna record what I did this week for YouTube real quick. But yes. So I lost a day to that. I did a giant recap with my artists because they're gonna be rolling off the project at the soon. I've cut from 4 down to 2, and then now I'm back up to 3. But I'm basically I've got them for a little bit longer. I'm gonna have them until probably the end of June on the game, and then I'll switch them to marketing materials. But because of this, it's time to really get a burn down to make sure that we're wrapping up everything on the way out. So I'm working with them on that. I'm working with a narrative person because some of my feedback was that the dialogue sucked, and it does. So I worked with basically it was kind of a lot of, how do I put it? Turns out I actually was very attached to the writing and I didn't realize it. And so I was very hesitant to change much, and I remain pretty hesitant. But in spite of that, thankfully, I found a writer that is working with me really well and closely, and we're overhauling the dialogue to make it better. And I really love what's going in. That's pretty good. Let me show you what the guys did. The art team's obviously been cranking. I didn't show this earlier. One of the areas that they rebooted was the calendar. I've been doing a lot of random stuff, by the way. But they reworked what this looks like quite a bit, and I rigged it up and I worked with them on this. We're still figuring out where this lamp is going to be, and generally I think we're still feeling out what this area looks like. There's different things, I rigged up the wind conditions. I'm a little bit involved in everything, obviously, because I'm the one that puts all this stuff in game. But they are involved in making this look sweet. I like the colors. I like the way this has changed. I think we've got a much better direction for this than we did before. That's coming online. They did a bunch of concept. I'll show you guys later when it's in, because they've basically done a concept for what they want over here for the breakup. And I rigged up the heart to get beaten to shit, which was kind of fun. Guess I can show you that. So there's lots of random art stuff is happening. Oh, here's a fun one, I guess. Spent an hour or two figuring out how to get. Is it gone? Oh, there it is. How to get the lighting here working. This is not enough. We're going to be doing a pass in the lighting, or on this whole, what it looks like when you're on the dance floor to just kind of spruce it up. That's coming in soon. What else? One of the big things, because I'm working on the narrative, things like I fixed the shadows and shit. Because I'm working on the narrative, it came to my attention that we need the little cutscenes, and so one of the things I did was script up. I introduced the concept of a scene, which I kind of had a scene component before, but now there's an actual object that is a scene object, which is a series of still images, like a camera, a lerp time to get to the camera, a background image, and some dialogue. And so here's an example of a scene. There's a couple of these in the game that I've done so far, but coming up with the tech for this. This plays music, she unlocks. And then here we go. You click through this. There's just a couple of things you can click through at your pace. before things unlock. So that helps tell the story a bit. That's one of the things I've been doing. That's what we're going to continue doing today. And that's the recap. Hey Popcans, what's up, man? Do I still have audio or did I lose it again? Still good. Yes. Technology hates me. It's probably deserved. Hey May, what's up? Kayla. Anyway, Mashed Potato, what's the name of your game? I can't believe, because I've seen that before. I've seen it on the, are you in Alan's Discord? I'm trying to remember where I've seen it. I've definitely seen it posted around. It looks really cool. Yeah, it'll be in the VOD, May. Don't worry about it. Okay. So, the scene we are working on today. Started this before lunch. Oh, I didn't do the recap. It's May 19th at noon. 1 week from the last one. Okay, so this is the scene we're working on now. This is the end of the Tunnel of Love. I need an animation there. I need to get rid of the HUD. I need to just obviously get a better background thing. I want Rue to be gone for the last shot. That's what we're gonna do. I want this to be over there. I kind of just want to fix this part. Got it. Word. Yeah, man. I dig it. That was cool. I don't know. Like, I don't connect things really. Like, I didn't connect that you were the guy that was working on that. Until, like, I don't know why I did. But that's awesome. I'm excited. That's coming out this summer too, right? So it is summer. When is that coming out? Should I not ask? Is it rude? Did I do a rude thing? Are you close to the end? Are you freaking out? Someday there won't be lag on streams. Technically Mixer doesn't have it, but then there'd be nobody to talk to, so it doesn't matter that there's no lag. You're hoping for August, but there's so much left to do. Yeah. Yeah, I was pretty torn about streaming today at all too, because I was getting so much more done, and I kind of felt like I was hitting a lull. I got that post-lunch kind of sleepy thing happening. It's the only reason I'm streaming, because I've got like lists right now, and I'm targeting a little bit later than you guys. I think everybody's targeting August. Like, well, obviously, all the indies are targeting August. I can't slip into next year, but there's temptation there. I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited for E3. I'm excited to see what gets announced for late this year. It could be that late this year is the year of the indie, because it could be that all of AAA is waiting until next year to launch with the new consoles and stuff. You were thinking about pushing it to fall or the end of the year. So we have to wait till after E3, but word on the street is December is a good month too, which I don't think I'm contractually allowed to launch in that month, otherwise I'd consider it. But like, yeah, I know it's kind of a weird one, because most people, conventional wisdom says to go with either hit in August or wait until like February. But I have seen a lot of success from indies in December, and it is a month where nobody makes any big announcements, because everything's out in like November, ahead of well ahead, like around Black Friday, right? I often forget about games that launched in December, but that's mostly late December. Yeah, and I mean, there's been a lot of successes in the AAA space in December, especially like, what is it? Didn't Astroneer launch in December? I think because we're looking around the same, like I'm probably later than you, Mashed Potato. So like, to me, December looks pretty attractive, but I'm just really nervous about hitting like October, September. Well, I don't want to slip into like October, November. I might though. I don't know. Or I might. I don't know. I can't make announcements. It's the temptation of like, do you come out on one platform before the others because that lets you work a little bit longer, or is that a bad idea because you're splitting your launch? It's all really unknowable. I'll say it was a lot easier with the Flame and the Flood because we were console exclusive to one console. So just coming out on like one console and PC was a lot easier than trying to do all of them. I think launch date and price are red herrings that we worry about too much. Yeah. I agree, Ichiro. Why launch it all? Well, the other thing is maybe, but it's like the one thing you can control, right? And everyone says it's such a big deal. Like, when the people you rely on to sell your stuff, like the people who run the storefronts, are like, don't do this, do this, it makes it, you know, it's kind of like, am I not going to listen to Microsoft and Epic? Of course not. Like, it doesn't even matter if they're right or wrong, or if it's just like, what do you call it? A self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, if you say that's true, then that's going to be true, right? You've pushed altered 4 times, there's always more to do. Yeah. I haven't... See, the key is to never announce, because then you don't have to push. Been very careful to not announce jack shit. You want to do a panel discussion and fight about it? Call in, Ichiro. Let's do it right now. Can we do that? Like a co-stream? I think we can. I think there's a way. You want to figure it out on the stream? That could be fun. You have a webcam, right? How would we do it? So like I've done in the past, Chris Slight set it up so that we could talk, but he's got like gear for it and stuff. Hey, attack button, what's up, man? I mean, we could just, you could call me on Skype and I could just like maximize Skype. Or Ichiro? Can you hear me, Ichiro?
Hey,
Holy shit. Can you guys hear Ichiro?
I don't know if they can hear me.
Well,
Am I on speakerphone?
well, I mean, you're coming through my desktop. Like, I have my phone wired so I can just... I don't like getting out of my chair, so my phone just forwards to, like, my desktop. So you're actually coming through my computer right now. Yeah, they can hear you.
That's pretty. Oh, they can hear me? Okay, you want to... So Gwen and I have been on multiple panels together, and I think we always end up agreeing with each other.
Okay, that's your perspective. No, that's actually true.
Okay, here's my thought, and I'm willing to be 100% wrong about this.
Let's get into this, but do you have, like, a webcam, any chance?
Yeah, I do have that technology. Do you want me to call in via Skype?
Yeah, or just GChat, like, with the what do you call it? Like, with the video.
All right, I'll do a Hangouts.
Yeah,
I'll be right back.
Yeah, sweet. Alright, shit. Okay. Shit, I gotta be mentally prepared. I didn't realize I was gonna defend a fucking position right now. You guys know who Ichiro is, right? Answer. Yeah, dude, what's up? Let's see if this is working.
Oh, I could see myself on Twitch.
Oh, nice. Okay, this is probably like not the most high-tech way to do this, but
I
whatever.
can barely hear you.
Oh yeah. Shit. I could just move the mic closer. Does that help?
Yeah, you sound great. Okay, yeah, impromptu panel. Who the hell am I? I'm some random indie dev who's arguing with Gwen.
Yes. This is your way.
I usually agree. Yeah, I think we're all bike shedding way too much. We are we like you're absolutely right that is one thing that we control, but I also think that there's a bunch of other stuff that we can control and we don't. We sort of like we're blind to a bunch of stuff in indiehood, in part because like conventional wisdom says a bunch of stuff and we all get into an echo chamber.
Okay. Sorry, I'm like fucking around with OBS for no reason. Anyway. Okay, so you think obviously there's a lot of stuff we control. I mean, so there's a lot of things you control up until launch, but the idea of delaying your launch until you know you have good press seems like a smart thing to do, right? And if you know for a fact that you can't get good press during a certain window, like it's pretty much the conventional wisdom exists for a reason that you can't get good press in September, October, November because all the ad buys, like because AAA does the takeovers and because AAA will buy out all of the websites and because so many huge games are launching then like all the oxygen's left the room. So it does make sense to try not to launch in that period. Like
I'll agree with you on that. So my thoughts are as follows though. Like we think way too much about like everybody should have a social media following and we should have Twitter set up like this and then we should have I don't know, Facebook set up like this. But one thing I would love to hear more about from indies is vetting during the project and really trying out different marketing messaging. So like a bunch of devs will set up a Twitter feed and they'll put stuff out there and they'll send a bazillion touches out to the press and streamers and they'll be like, oh, okay, well, I got 5,000 wish lists on Steam. That's the end of the story. But maybe they have this great game, but they're talking about it differently. Or maybe they have a game that isn't that great, but if they just hammered the shit out of it a little more in ways that mattered, they would sort of like leave that local maximum and get something that's great. I guess that's my scattered Sunday afternoon thought.
No, that's cool. Like it's not like we planned this. So I think at the end of the day, there's always uncertainty and you're generally way too close to things. At the end of the day, most of your decisions come down to how much like how much money do you have left kind of thing, or contracts or things like that. I agree that, and a lot of it comes down to, for most indies, to time. Like you can't do absolutely everything. Like it would be nice to have the Discord and the Twitter and, you know, I'd love to do a trailer every month. That'd be fucking sweet. But, you know, you don't always have time to do that. And so you kind of have to try something and hope it pans out. And I think like we do, you want to help other people. So if you find like this worked for me more than this, then you kind of want to share that. And so I think a lot of the more successful indies are saying things like share GIFs on Twitter because for a long time that worked. And I think I am sensitive. Like Tanya Short did a pretty good tweet thread at one point pretty recently. And she just echoed something that I do believe, which is Twitter is an echo chamber where you're largely tweeting out stuff to other game devs. Yeah.
Yep.
And if I'm in AAA, I can take a marketing image or something and I can get it focus tested and I can pay like, cause you know, 2K won't bring down the money to make it happen. And I can pay to have somebody say, this image is better than this image. And you can argue over how useful that is, but it's something. Whereas if you're indie, you don't have anything like that. The only thing you have you don't have the money. So you do what you can for free, which is usually like tweet it out, see how many people like this image versus this image. Right. So I think Twitter is useful for like A/B testing. I do see a lot of that going on there. It's useful for seeing in general if your ideas are sticky in a visual way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I totally understand. Like everybody markets differently. I don't actually feel like there is an echo chamber. I feel like most of the indies I know have wildly different approaches. Maybe, for instance, the Into the Breach FTL guys, I don't think they made a Twitter or a Discord or any of this shit.
Well, okay, so here's where I'm gonna just like
Okay.
you're talking about the FTL guys,
Okay, yeah,
right?
yeah, fair,
I mean,
fair.
it's like, okay, so I want to pick a celebrity that's not a terrible celebrity. Okay, there's a good, like Ryan Reynolds could tweet the word fart and that would get traction because he's Ryan Reynolds. So same thing with the Into the Breach folks. What I'm talking about isn't necessarily, oh, we need to be spending a bunch of money on like A/B testing marketing assets. But when I talk to other indie developers, like, okay, here's an example. So the Indie Game Collective here in Boston has a Friday launch frunch, right? That's clever. I like it. And they bring in a different indie team each week. And that indie team will come in and they'll say, okay, here's what I'm working on. And I want you to beat the crap out of it. And so the Indie Game Collective will meet and listen and they'll beat the crap out of the idea. And by and large, I really don't see people, indies, taking the right feedback from that. So they'll be like, oh, this, the game, the game's fine. Oh, the theme's fine. Oh, everything's fine about it. And then the indie team will be like, oh, yeah, that means I'm doing really well. Whereas I think what we could be doing for relatively cheap, especially early on, is to try a bunch of stuff and then to sort of tweak it a little bit until it becomes something that everybody absolutely must have.
Okay, so what you're talking about here, this feels like it's moving in a couple of different directions. So you're talking about how French sounds great. It sounds like a lot of the people you're talking to are students, perhaps, or people who are.
No, these are professional game developers who are in business and have made multiple games. And we are so freaking stubborn and myopic that we're like, I want to make this. And sometimes we're like, okay, I'm coming here for feedback. And then you give somebody feedback and their response is, oh, well, it's too late to change X.
Yeah.
And X is some fundamental fucking thing that like is going to tank the game at launch.
Okay, well, yes. So this is different. You can't. How do you put it? I think what you're going for here is the best marketing is a good product. And
yes,
it's
100%.
That's definitely something I've heard before from marketing people. They say that marketing is the best marketing is nothing I can do. The best marketing is a good product. And
Yep.
you're concerned. You think a lot of people are worried way too much about their launch window and marketing and so forth, and not enough about making something that's worth showing, that a product that's so good that people need it. Okay,
Yep.
that's a reasonable argument. And you're also venting slightly because you feel like you're giving feedback and people aren't taking that feedback well. And
They're taking it well,
or aren't taking the takeaway that you wish they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who am I, like, and therefore should they listen to it? But I really think the one thing that we can change that we're not is if an indie team goes to a group of people and shows the game off to those people and the response is, oh yeah, okay, that's great. That's a bad result. That sucks because that means that the press isn't going to care because like, okay, okay, that's a great game. Good. That's a good game and gamers aren't going to care. And therefore, I think the one thing that we do have control over that's going to change our marketability most is that the pivoting based on feedback.
Okay. So I guess I am trying to work back here. So you're saying your argument is you're giving people feedback that this is a good product, but it could be better, and to keep pushing, but they're not listening to that?
Yeah, because I mean, like, how good isn't good enough, right? Yeah. Is the phrase.
Okay, and you're telling the teams this, and they're not like internalizing it.
Yeah.
Okay. There is, yeah. Well, the feedback that, So it's hard to say. Some of the hardest feedback is the feedback where you tell someone to go fish, or you're not done yet. This is great. I can't wait to see it when it's done. Like, this is the, it's difficult to give this feedback because it's not something that's actionable. And especially when you're stressed out or when you're really deep into something, I actually don't know the right way to tell somebody to go fish or to keep pushing, to tell somebody that they're not done yet on a global level. Like, I think it's a lot easier if you tell somebody that they're not, to drill down into more specific things. How do I put it? So I've been getting a lot of feedback on Kind, right? And I sent it out to different people. And I'm trying to think of, by far the best advice I got was from Lottie from Weather Factory. And because it wasn't necessarily super vague or super specific, but it was just presented really well. Like it started with, here's she literally did the fucking compliment sandwich. It was beautiful. I've never been, like, had my emotions managed that well in my life, but it was just literally like, here's some things I like. In my opinion, the biggest problem with your game is the lack of purpose and as far as narrative goes early on. And then here's a personal story about how we were told when we were making Cultist Simulator that maps are incredibly valuable for telling story, followed by a couple other things she didn't like, followed by another compliment. Like, it was just excellently given feedback.
Do you need to be managed that way? I always feel like
I didn't think
at me just
no, like, I don't, but I kind of appreciated it. Yeah. Like, it was kind of nice,
right?
You know?
Fair enough.
But there is definitely an art to giving feedback in a way that it's received, right? Yes. And I think one thing, like, if you're frustrated, if you're feeling constantly like people are reaching out to you for feedback and you're communicating that feedback to them and they're just not getting it, if you feel like that's constant, then I don't want to be like, maybe it's you, but like, at some point the experimentation is required to figure out how to give feedback in a way where people are receptive to it. Because
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and you have a question here, what's the downside of going with a publisher? But let me answer that. I think, like, I'm going to come to you for feedback soonish about our upcoming game. And I don't want you to hold back. I don't think that how do I put this without being an asshole? Like, you know, one should never be completely jerky about feedback.
But you don't want the compliment sandwich. You're gluten-free.
I guess so. I don't have time for it because, like, you know, this isn't my first rodeo, and therefore, like, at this point, if I don't make money on my next game, I'm not going to be able to eat, right?
Yeah.
Gluten or no. So I don't think we should be nasty to each other, but I don't think we should focus too much about how we give feedback to experienced devs, at least. But, like, I think instead we should have indies sort of realize that how feedback is important and what to do with it, rather than focusing, you know, I think, you know, the term bike shedding, where you're, like, focusing on, like, oh, well, you know, should the icon be red or green? Well, I think it should be, you know, FF0000, and I should think it should be EE1100, right? Because, like, you're focusing too much on stuff, whereas you're essentially rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Most of us.
So there's two schools of thought here, though, because I feel like I frequently want to give the advice too, where it's like, you haven't hit it yet, you need to rethink some fundamental things. But then on the other hand, you have a lot of these talks and things and indies going out saying very loudly, stop polishing your thing to death, that you're know when to cut and run, you know, keep your dev cycles short. No matter what, keep your dev cycles very short. It's better to have multiple shots on goal.
Yep.
And so these ideas are in direct opposition. And I actually thought you fell into the other camp. Maybe I'm wrong. The don't take 7 years to ship a game kind of camp. Because there's obviously an extreme on either end, and it's hard to know where you are in that. And it's hard to know if you are, because what do I say? If you go in and you rethink something that's really fundamental about your game, right? You're taking a risk that will pan out.
Sure. So, like, I guess two things is like Wheeze 202 says for a lot of indies, it is the first rodeo. Giving feedback in a respectful way is a great skill to have. Absolutely agree with that.
Mm.
And I don't mean don't be respectful about it, but, and I don't mean take a million years on your game, which I am doing now. So, you know, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt.
You had a baby. Like, I think you're
I did.
allowed.
And she's relying me on getting my next game right. But like, I mean, I guess to put, to go back to the original point is if I think devs put a game out there for feedback to other devs, to at PAX audiences, and they sort of hear what they want to hear. Oh, I got 1,000 people playing my game at PAX, and boy, some people even came back twice. And that's that's tragic because it feels really good to have that kind of feedback, but then a bunch of devs are really confused when they launch the game and they don't get that reaction from the press or from the market.
Yes, there is definitely a huge difference between doing super well on Twitter and doing super well at a show and doing super well in the market. Those are different things. That is absolutely true. And like, I hope and want to believe that most people, like a lot of indies don't, how do I put it? They're doing it for the love, not necessarily the money, especially.
Which is, that's totally okay.
So I guess I've been, where am I going with this? I don't know many people other than a lot of people in Boston or people in AAA space who are doing this legitimately trying to live off of it, right?
Yeah, which is totally different. Like if you are doing it as art, which is, and I don't say that disparagingly, then you should do what feels good to you and what you want to express 100%.
And I think those indies aren't going to take your advice necessarily to, if you're like, rethink this fundamental thing because it'll make the game more marketable, more appealing to the, whatever. This is what I think you should do with your game. And they're like, this is my art. I don't give a fuck what you think.
Yeah.
Like, that's a perfectly rational thing, I think.
Agreed.
But I do sense there is like this assumption that, or what is it? Being critically successful or feeling like you're making your baby and your baby is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Not a literal baby. I'm sorry. You're I'm sure your baby is perfect, but like your game, if you think you're like, I'm making this game because it's art and it's perfect and it's beautiful and obviously that'll also lead to financial success. No, those are different, right? And
Often,
I definitely get what you're feeling there. But so we started this because we're talking about launch time windows.
Yeah.
And you think that we worry about that too much. So your argument is the best marketing and the best launch time is the time when the game is right because it is good enough, because the best marketing, you need good marketing, your best marketing is a good product, and worrying about your launch window at the expense of making a good game is detrimental, and you perceive that to be a really bad detrimental thing.
Yeah, I agree. So especially with the last part, it's like if you are painting a house and you spend most of the time painting the house with a paint that's going to be that's going to melt the first time it rains, but you spend like 2 weeks painting a little inscription on the door because you think it's really, it's really, really important because it's the first thing that people see. That's how I worry that we as indies are doing the whole product equals marketing thing. So when I say, obviously launch time is hugely important. So you launch when 17 other games that have $1 bazillion of marketing budget, you're going to get lost in the shuffle. But wouldn't it be great if, for independents who want to be commercially successful, which is not, it's not everybody's focus, we spent more time saying, okay, I'm putting this out. What is the response? Oh, it's lukewarm. Okay, I'm going to retool some fundamental things about the design, presentation, or the messaging, and then I put it out. Okay, that's slightly better. And then you get it to the point, the ideal, the platonic ideal, is a situation where it doesn't freaking matter when we launch because, because it's super hot and people are going to buy it whatever month it launches in.
Yeah. So I think what the actionable advice there, though, is like a point that I think you kind of touched on that I think is important is when you say get it out, you're not talking about get it out necessarily to a show. You're talking about get it out to what exactly? Focus testers,
To anything. So like a show is a great example of something that's misleading in my mind.
Yeah.
And I've done this multiple times where you go out to a show and like I said, you have a bunch of people playing it and they're excited and they come back and, let's play it on Saturday and they play it again on Sunday. And that's like, to us, it's success. But if we view that as table stakes, it's like, okay, well, if people are playing the game and they don't burn my booth over, that's probably means that I'm like as good as any other indie out there. But how do I really evaluate what happened at a show? Well, if Jerry Holkins comes and he plays the game twice, the guy who runs Penny Arcade, then that probably means something good. If Polygon comes by a couple of times, that's, and writes a bunch of articles about it, that's really good. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we should be recalibrating all of the feedback we get and being more critical about, that person said it was good. Were they really trying to spare my feelings? Or people came to see me at the booth and were they just there to have a good time? Or would they actually buy the game when it came out?
Mm-hmm. It is difficult to know. Like, we don't have the ability to get focus testers, really. You know what I mean? In the way that we did in AAA, you can watch strangers. They'll put they'll get strangers in. They'll track their eyes. You can literally see if they're you can tell they're always looking up and to the right for a map, and there's no map there. Which is definitely something I miss a bit because it does feel like there is no perfect way to know that you're making a good product, right? Just because some guy from Penny Arcade comes over a million times, or Polygon or Rock Paper Shotgun write an article or two. So I mean, I'll admit this. I've already admitted this on stream once. Kine had less than 2,000 wish lists on Steam, right?
Yeah.
So Jake Burkett's math, so roughly where that's gonna land. But I mean, Kine was written about by Rock Paper Shotgun.
Okay. That's a great point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's a great point. Press coverage does not equal commercial success. But how much does your stream know about your wheeling and dealing, your biz dev things for Kine?
Nothing.
Okay.
Oh, I'm on the Epic Games Store. Obviously, they know.
Okay. I'm going to say this. Gwen has already won with Kine for a number of reasons. No, I am dead serious.
Yeah, financially.
Financially. Okay, so they know that. The important thing, if you're a commercial indie, commercially focused indie, is that you do something that you love doing that makes a bunch of money and does not kill a bunch of people, I think, right? And therefore you have already won. And if you do poorly on Steam because you have 2,000 wish lists, who the fuck cares? Because you were able to get money, you are going to be able to get money, and you love Kine and it's gorgeous, right? So you won.
That was lucky. Yeah, but I mean, not everybody
could be. No, it was not lucky. You just pounded the pavement until you got a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that was I was I don't know how much of this am I allowed to say. I was streaming in Carrie and Epic's office right when they were announcing the storefront. And so I could and I had a laptop with Kine on it, and I had a pitch deck because I had been pitching to publishers. So I kind of immediately before the store launched, I was actually pitching at Epic's office. And yes, the exclusivity deal did cover. I mean, I've been open about that. It covered the cost of game dev for Kine, which is great. So yeah, I'm set until Kine launches, and then maybe for a little bit I'm set personally. But then that's great. But that's not how do I put it? That's a separate conversation, I feel like.
I think it's closer than we let on because, my company, Dejaban, we've done a bunch of games that have sold in the 100,000 units, which is pretty reasonable for a team of our size. And all of those is because we had fun games or interesting games, and we did biz dev. Everybody on your stream probably who's doing a game is doing a good game, right? I don't know. Maybe like I'll let your stream figure that out. But a solid game plus some biz dev equals potentially financial success. So why is that a separate conversation?
Well, I think it's hard to explain, but I feel like a lot of biz dev is luck. Like I do feel like the Epic deal was very fortunate. Like I could have just as easily not been physically in their office when they were
Mhm.
launching the store. Like
Yeah.
that's like you could say that's not luck, that's pounding the pavement, but and it's true, like I had been pitching to publishers and stuff before that, and I did put in a lot of work and I happen to have all the materials there. But like the how do I put it? I don't know where I'm going with this. I also just feel like maybe I shouldn't have used Kind as an example because I did definitely, that was not meant to be a commercial product in the same way.
Well, you've
It is,
failed successfully.
yeah. So where am I going with this?
Yeah.
Let's wrap this back around to like,
And I can let you have your dev stream too. I don't want to.
well, that's okay. I feel like you were feeling kind of punchy about some, tell me what you think indies are doing wrong as far as marketing goes and as far as focus testing their games go.
Yeah, I see so many indies who do so many just competent games, but they don't pivot enough. We don't pivot enough, and we create stuff that's merely okay. And now that's like take Steam, and I'll like so I, you know, Steam's great for many reasons, but since there are so many solid games out there, you can't just be solid. So and I don't want to call out anybody in the Boston area, but what? Now where am I going with this? I'm going with
It's hard because I think like I can think of a couple games, but at some point we gotta name names, right? Like for a game, like what's a
you first.
nah? I don't want to hurt people's feelings. This is hard.
I'll rag on Kine, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, like I'll rag on my own games. The Flame and the Flood, sure, fuck it. Like the Flame and the Flood. What did you think? I mean, we were really proud. We made that on time and on budget.
Yep.
We did exactly what we said we would do in our
Mhm.
Kickstarter. It was initially a financial failure. I think we became a success. Like it's pretty well known. The Switch really, like we, again, I would say that's pretty much luck. Like we signed with a publisher, and that publisher put us in the Switch
Yeah.
really early.
But
Um,
it's always luck. You met your other half because of luck.
yeah,
You were born in the U.S. to reasonably affluent circumstances because of luck. You ended up in the Epic Store because of luck. Like it's all luck, and part of luck is setting your. I mean, you can't choose where you were born, I suppose, but you specifically chose to go out and pound the pavement, and you had many failures before the few really, really good successes of getting the deals
yeah, but
that you did.
there's no way to. That's not. I would feel weird giving that kind of feedback to people because it's not necessarily. How does it? You can't
Yeah,
simultaneously say that it was like gumption or stick throatedness or whatever the fuck, right? Because
yeah,
like, there's a lot of people that are, in my opinion, should probably. Okay, you spent several years in your first game, ship it, try again. Like this
yeah.
isn't going to pan out, and it's difficult to know which side of that you're on. Like there's, and you're right. Like there was a lot of failures with Kind. Kind didn't get into Day of the Devs three times.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of rejection there, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to know if you're and then obviously there's a lot of rejection from other places too, and it's hard to uh, mindlessly believing in what you're doing kind of paid off for me because I was just making what I wanted, but I don't know if that's
Mhm.
good business advice, especially if our goal is to give people advice on marketing and so forth.
Well, is that what folks are here about? Let's talk
No.
about Flaming the Flood,
Oh, okay.
which is, I mean, it was a gorgeous game. It was so well constructed. The biz dev and marketing were on point, and where it fell for me was systemically. I just didn't find it like systemically satisfying.
Hmm.
What could be done about that? Well, you could retool the systems a bunch of I like because everything about that game was right for me, except for the like this is I don't know if people have played it here.
It's a survival roguelike game. I think the yeah, I think the Flame in the Flood, how do I put it? I think we hit the vibe and the feel we were going for. I think it did need more time, especially. I think we were stretched too thin. Like, I remember we had a post-mortem internally about it, too. I think another thing is we were definitely tackling a genre none of us were super jazzed about.
That is a problem. But,
yeah.
I mean, that's game dev, too, right?
Yeah, I think that's less of a... I didn't realize how bad of a problem it would be, maybe, because like on art teams, it's very normal if you're an artist to work on a genre you're not super jazzed about, right?
Sure.
Like most of the this is ironic, but like most people who go to art school to do art don't imagine that they're going to be modeling guns. Most of them are liberal arts majors who hate guns. Like, and most of our industry is shooters, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's just a certain reality for a lot of artists that you often work in genres that you don't necessarily adore, and you just fall in love with the craft, right? Like, you appreciate the craft and the doing of the thing. So,
but like the artistry of that game was perfect. The animation was good, right? I like, Flame in the Flood could have been better for me if it were more like Don't Starve or FTL or whatever. And I think that what I mean, well, like, how can I can't level any criticisms against it because it was a great first game for Molasses Flood, and it did financially well enough so that they're still in business. But what I mean, it didn't catch on the way FTL did, and that was a systemic, game mechanical problem.
Yeah, I think so. I crashed my boat and died, but I got it.
I alt F4'd Flame in the Flood after 10 minutes. Do you need luck and to make a good game to have good marketing?
Do you need luck? You need both, right? Like, you need...
I'd rather be lucky than good.
Yeah. Who's that? That's a famous saying, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know who said that. 10 internet points for whoever can figure out who said that. But no, like, you can make a mediocre... Like, Flappy Bird was terrible, but it just hit the right thing at the right time. But I think what we as independent developers want to do is create a solid game and be lucky enough that it hits at the right time. That's all I want.
Yeah, I think an argument I've heard recently from a friend of mine that works in publishing is, at this point, especially with the market going the way it is, it's better to be critically successful because then you can land more deals in the future. Than to then kick out a lot of stuff and limp along. Like, so if you have two methodologies, because there are kind of two, right? Like, there's definitely like the short dev cycle, no matter what, make a lot of games fast, make a game every year or so. Or in the case of... Oh, God, but his are good, though.
His are good.
That's a hard...
But some of them are bad.
It's a hard comparison.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Now I gotta rethink things. But there is definitely like the ship it fast mentality versus the only ship quality games you're proud of mentality. And I think in a world where it's difficult to stand out and so forth, being known as like, this is a studio that makes quality games will get you deals with Annapurna and so forth. And I don't know where I'm going with that either, because I can think of counterexamples. Like, I actually really respect Bithell and what he's doing, and a lot of his things was make short, quick games.
I only really played Thomas Was Alone, but on the topic, I was, Masterclass. There's like, they bring Werner Herzog and James Masterson and so forth to come in and to basically give like a 20-part lecture with homework on various topics. And Will Wright, who did SimCity Sims, etc., did the masterclass on game design, which I thought it was not right for me. I think it was, maybe right for somebody who was like more, fresh to the genre. But one of the interesting things that he said was an anecdote he recounted where a professor of art, pottery in particular, had a class, and he A/B tested the class, and he split the class up into two groups. And group one was told, okay, you are going to make a single piece of work and your grade at the end of the semester is going to be based on how good that single work is. And the other half of the class was told quality does not matter at all. You're going to be graded on the number of complete pieces that you create. And so he ran the semester, and at the end of it, he looked at both groups, and almost to a person, the people who created more pots ended up creating the better ones at the end of the semester than the ones who just made the one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So does this mean we should all go participate in those 24-hour game jams, make 1,000 games in 2 years, and then we'll be fucking geniuses at making games?
Well, I wonder if it allows us to be less precious about a particular topic. Zyba Scott, who did Elegy for a Dead World with us, and he did Make Sail. He's doing a bunch of little games, and they are really inventive, interesting little games. He did Block Pooper, which, okay, not terribly inventive, but then his next one is Kind Words, where you basically just send happy letters. You write happy letters to other people on the internet. And his next one, I don't think he's announced it, is this really great short high concept RPG where you are playing in a troupe of actors and you're actually putting on an RPG. And so he's coming up with all these really interesting ideas. And the more of these you come up with, I think the more experimental you can become, and therefore you could potentially hit something really hot.
That is true if you want to make something experimental. How do I put this? So I think that if you make a lot of small experimental games quickly, you'll get good at making small experimental games. I think you'll get good at the analogy of making. If you want to get really, really good at making pots, you mostly make the same pot over and over and over, right? Until you perfected making that pot. And so I think the downside, perhaps, of being a part of game jams like this and working on lots of small experimental games that you make in a week, is that you'll get really, really good at making games that you make in a week. But it'll be very difficult to go from that and jump into something much, much bigger. Like maybe
I don't agree.
You don't think so? Okay.
I think that if you want to make a really, really amazing pot, wow, we're into the metaphors. Like, okay, so if you want to make a great pot, known as a master potter, then you make a bunch of pots and you learn about pots and you make pots and you make more pots and you get really great at making pots and you do the glazing and then you do the throwing and you get you learn the craft of that. If you want to make a remarkable pot that's going to end up on the front of, I don't know, the New Yorker magazine because it's so amazing, you learn how to make pots, and then you do game jams making chairs and toilets and electronics, and suddenly you come up with this pot that you can, I don't know, shove up your butt and sit on, and that's remarkable.
I don't know. See, that's something. I suppose that is remarkable.
Yeah. So my thought, though, is that, like, I wonder if, as indies especially, who are more on the commercial side, are a little too conservative and should be doing the game jams because that allows them to think, okay, it's okay to be experimental and put like Super Hot again, to come back to that. That is something with an experimental bent to it, but it is a quality title. And would they have gotten there if they were all like, okay, well, we're just going to be a first-person shooter company?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's hard to say. There is definitely a lot of good stuff coming out of game jams too. Like Baba Is You was
that's true,
crushing, right? And that is definitely a counterpoint to what I was just saying earlier. Where like I do perceive. I think in my opinion, it is a leap to go from making a game jam to doing a 2-year project.
100% agree with you. Yeah.
I feel like incrementally making larger games is better than repeated or moving. I don't know. Depends what you want to do. If you want to do 2-year long projects, then moving to a place where you're making bigger and bigger projects until you're making 2-year projects is like the goal more than doing 10 game jams and then doing a 2-year project. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, and I agree with you, but I don't think it's that binary. I think that, and so half of this is me talking to myself, right? And saying like, oh, what did I do wrong and how would I do it better? I don't think you have to stop being experimental if you're doing those 2-year projects. But I do think that if you're only doing the long projects, you tend to be more conservative, which is why a lot of
Yeah.
people say that AAA is super conservative. They put all their eggs in one basket, except maybe Rockstar. I've heard it. Matt Weiss over at NYU. He teaches narrative with Clara over at NYU. He's like, Rockstar does a really interesting thing where they introduce new mechanics into GTA every iteration, but they've already tested those crazy new mechanics as entire other games. And I don't know his argument well enough to give examples, but I thought that was a nice point.
Yes, I have nowhere I can take that. I agree. Like, you definitely can't get as experimental when you have that much money on the line and that many people's livelihoods in the line and so forth.
But can you afford not to be? And how do you do it? Like, how does the Rockstar, he would argue, is the perfect example of they are experimental on their scope and budget and timeline. And so they do these games which are kind of experimental, and then the experiments which are successful get, the experimental systems get folded into GTA or Red Dead Redemption or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's that's experimental in the AAA scope, right?
Sure.
That's not Baba Is You experimental.
Yeah, and I mean, can Rockstar be Baba Is You experimental?
No. Oh, I mean, I don't know, maybe. Like, the other thing is, would Baba Is You be a better game if it had the kind of production values of a 300-person team and so forth? Like, there's something about beautiful little games that don't have those kinds of production values that are worth it. I don't know where I'm going with this. I have
I don't know. I agree. Let's see. As long as you put 10K hours into a game, I don't think it matters if you prototype a lot or do your game directly. The cost of a single experiment is sort of key for that. When the point of prototyping is to find the idea to go through with. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that, but a lot of indies prototype and then they end up with a local maximum of something that's like, oh, the team thinks it's fun to play and people didn't run away from it screaming when we showed them the prototype. But that's a lot different from, I'm going to prototype until I find something that people are really excited about. That's, I think, if you're an indie, the purpose of prototyping.
Yeah. I mean, I can always think of counterexamples though, right?
Sure.
Like, there's certain game types, there's certain genres where you're just not going to find the fun immediately, where you just need you need a certain amount of content, and those genres I think are actually the hardest ones to iterate on, most likely.
Yeah, well, I mean, make it concrete. Give me an example.
Oh, what's a good example? Like, obviously an RPG, any RPG, you're not gonna, until you have because the feedback loop is like, go out, kill things, get loot, kill things better.
Yep.
You until you have a certain number of enemies to kill and a certain amount of stuff, you're not going to be fun, and you're not going to or any game where you're relying on combinatorics. Until you have a certain amount of content, you're not going to know that that's fun.
Yeah, you couldn't do RimWorld or Dwarf Fortress in a weekend.
Yeah,
you just wouldn't get that explosion, the emergent mechanics out of that. So I agree with that. And my answer to that though is what? Like, if you're going to do something like that, like an RPG, let me put it this way. Most indies I know who do something of the complexity of an RPG where you can only really start testing things, like 6-9 months into production, is that they're 9 months into production on this RPG, and then they don't say, okay, how can we tweak this to make this remarkable and interesting? They've already sunk in so many resources that they're kind of afraid to pivot at that point. And I think that is hurting us.
Yeah, it's hard to know when you should do that because everyone's going to give you different advice too. Like, it's hard to know in your head. Like, left to my own devices, I would never ship a game because I'm like, oh, but if I just burn it down, like, I could do this so much better if I just, rethink this part or that part, and then you end up never shipping, and that's definitely a thing you can do too.
Yeah.
Like it's a difficult calculus. It's easy to. I mean, there is definitely that famous saying, right? That if you ship a bad game, it's bad forever. Whereas if you just keep working on it, I mean, it could just never come out. Though is the
Well,
counterpoint.
we've all done that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I also wonder. I don't know. I mean, I do also wonder if there are many, like, okay, sorry, to take back to the earlier point, there are a lot of really solid games on Steam. And wouldn't it be nice if a solid game on Steam that wasn't super remarkable and it wasn't fun for everybody could still do well financially because it finds traction with a small audience or medium-sized audience. I don't like. I'm looking for the next Slay the Spire.
The niche. So you're saying indies, in your mind, more indies should go for niche games? Is that your argument now?
No, I'm gonna put the onus on the storefront here, and
Ooh.
on Steam, like because I have some like thoughts on that.
Because you have a deal with Epic too? What's going on here? I'm kidding.
Well, no, I mean because I work for Valve, right? And so I can shit on Steam.
Wait, so you work for Valve now?
Do you not know that?
Well, I thought you were out there contracting or something.
No, I mean I moonlight. I'm an indie, and then it's the opposite of the AAA thing, right? Where you moonlight. I moonlight for Valve.
I mean, I guess that's kind of a bode well for your next game. Congratulations.
I can't. Suddenly, I magically have the next game just
like that's
show up on every screen. No, I can't.
That's weird. Why is this indie game on on top of every list? We don't know.
It's just a Flappy Bird clone. That's weird. How'd that happen? No, I think that like there's a winner takes all mentality on many platforms at this point because the algorithm says so. And I wonder, like, so why do I do Valve work? It's because I want to be able to find my next indie game to play personally, me, Ichiro, as a gamer.
Yeah.
And so like I go through and I'm like, I put 120 hours into Slay the Spire because it was my systemic kind of game and it was good. I would probably put like 20 hours into a game that was different and fun and like it. But that kind of stuff doesn't get surfaced in a meaningful way to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like, oh, well, this game got, mostly positive reviews, and I see no reviews for it in Polygon or RPS or whatever, and nobody's talking about it, and therefore I don't hear about it. So, and yet I would probably enjoy that game for 20 hours, and that would be a success for me.
Yeah. So this is an argument I've heard a lot of times, and I'm surprised, like, I guess I'm not surprised Valve hasn't jumped on it, but I think it would be really interesting if we leaned into the idea that, like, I like the curation system. I think it would be really interesting if people could run their own storefront. Like, I would love to go to the Ichiro Lam storefront. Lam? How do I say your last name?
Lam.
Lam.
Yeah, Lam.
I'd love to go to the Ichiro Lam storefront and, like, see the games that you think are good as a person who's curating a storefront. Like, I do think there's and maybe... I mean, I know this is hard. Like, one of the things I love about the Epic Games Store is that as a developer, I can say, hey, if a streamer sells a game, they get a percentage, and I can set that percentage. Yeah. Like, I think it'd be neat to do that. Yeah, no, yeah. But like, what if a curator could do that on like a storefront? Like, what if Valve gave up some of their 30% to the person who was curating a storefront? So if a person was going through like a different web portal that just used Steam's backend, and if a curator was like crafting a storefront,
sure,
they get a small percentage.
Yeah. All right, I cannot speak for Valve at all. I'm just some random dude in Boston that does some random stuff.
You set up a precedent. You're like, yo, bitch, I moonlight for Valve.
I wonder if that would simply not predispose is the wrong word, but it would mean that to really make the most money, what you would do is you would set up a really popular storefront and simply funnel people to the most popular games. Because if I funnel 1% of gamers to, Rocket League's a wrong example. but I'm going to say PUBG,
Mhm.
right? Versus 10% of all comers to of all traffic to this visual novel. That's like a bazillion dollars for funneling traffic to PUBG versus like, oh, I'm this little visual novel store.
Yeah, but everybody, what's going to happen is the same thing you see on Twitch, where I think there's going to be the people. If you are one of the people that's like, hey, you know what you should buy my storefront? Fortnite.
Yeah,
Everybody's going to have that in their storefront. And then your storefront's going to be really generic, and who gives a fuck? Like, unless you have a following through some other thing. Like, if you're a
yeah,
famous football player and you're like, yo, every time you buy a game through my storefront so I get a kickback, I
yeah.
could see that, right? But, like, I don't. If everybody did the same storefront, then nobody would get any money from that. I think
Disagree.
that's the
This
same.
is where I can disagree with
Hmm.
you, if I
Okay.
may.
Yeah. No.
Uh,
No. That's not allowed here. This is my channel.
no, what happens, and this happens, I mean, this happens on Twitch and YouTube and in the press and so forth, is, I mean, like, and everywhere is the first movers or the people with a lot of advertising dollars get the main channels that push Fortnite or PUBG or whatever.
Hmm.
And there are a million other channels who push Fortnite and PUBG, and only those few that made the first mover advantage or what have you get that traffic. And then, like,
Are you
I,
saying variety streamers don't exist? Because I mean, the
I'm not
other.
saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
I
that
know
variety streamers largely don't make the money that the first mover
they.
Fortnite streamers do.
Of course they don't, right? But I mean, the other side of that is just that the market, like the market wants Fortnite. The market doesn't want our adorable visual novels, right? And so there's not going to be as many visual novel storefronts, and they're they're going to be more niche. But it's the same thing. Like if you want to start a following right now on Twitch or something, the best way to do it is to lean into the more novel stuff, or to have some sort of eclectic taste. I don't know. I think it's a cool idea to have to allow people to, well, at a minimum, like I think we agree. I think it's a cool idea to allow people to create their own storefronts. I think that's cool. And yeah, I do think in this era of like we have content creators on Twitch and so forth. And the reality is our marketing, like, is your marketing Polygon or is your marketing like Toodles 54, this like, you know, redheaded 16-year-old in fucking California or some shit? Like, no, Toodles 64 is going to sell way more of your product. And I think we should just lean into that because the reality is like EA is buying Toodle 64 like dinner and shit. And we can't do that as indies. Like we can't buy out the streamers or the big storefronts. But what we can do is things like what Epic is doing with their storefront, where they say, all right, if you buy a game through a link that we provide from a streamer, that streamer gets a cut, and that happens kind of automatically. I honestly think what Epic is doing could really be really good for variety streamers and for indie developers, because I perceive right now that marketing in this way, the kind of big marketing that you see on Twitch and so forth, or YouTubers and so forth, the only people that can buy those out are large marketing companies, EA, Activision, and so forth.
Yeah, and so here's something where I think you and I can and should disagree on, and then in a year we can see how it pans out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that conceptually, what you're saying sounds good. However, in reality, what's going to happen is that yes, for the most popular curators in the most popular genres, that's going to work out. The curators are going to get their cut, and they're going to make a bunch of money. Great, and then you're going to get your sort of mid-sized curators with a mid-sized following and this sort of kind of, you know, reasonably popular genres or what have you, and they're going to make a small amount, and that's going to be barely enough to feed them. And then you're going to find the people who are doing the adorable visual novels, and that they're going to cater to such a niche, narrow audience that even if they and maybe visual novels is the bad example
Well,
because it's bigger.
mm-hmm. I could
But
see if
yeah,
it's if if you're working in a niche that's so niche
No.
that anybody that's a fan of that niche already buys everything in that niche, then you don't need streamers, right? Or
Well, no,
any,
because
and you don't
there's
want
so
to.
much that's not being surfaced, and that's why I think that curators who are incentivized by an affiliate cut, are the wrong way to do that. And in fact, it's the platform's responsibility to surface those really cool niche games, or the sort of like not as good as Slay the Spire, but you should be playing this for 20 hours.
Okay. The platform, like you think Steam and Epic, or you think
Yeah, I think Steam should get its butt in gear and do something really crazy and experimental.
you think okay. Do you, how do I put it? Okay. Like curate their store? Is that the crazy experimental thing you're describing?
Um, no, because what? I don't think. I mean, I don't think.
Because another word for curation is gatekeeping, right?
But I mean, like the affiliates who would be curating their little affiliate pages or big affiliate pages would also be gatekeeping, right?
Yes, but I think that's how do I put it? In this world, yeah, in the world I'm imagining, where in the world I'm imagining, you let content creators, or what do you want to call it, tastemakers, or whatever
Uh,
you want to call them, you let people craft storefronts, and those people can try to drive traffic to their own storefronts rather than Steam's. And yes, in my imagination, they would get a cut, preferably out of Valve's cut, of what of of what the fee would be to the storefront. Um, yeah, I see that as being I don't know, like a modern good thing. Fits with the way the world works now, I guess. Um,
yeah, but like, so that happens with Amazon, and
does it?
what's that?
Does it? I didn't know that.
Oh, 100%. Like if you go to like the Wirecutter, they have a disclaimer. A percentage of da 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 comes from da 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 da, and if you buy a product that's linked here, we'll get a cut.
Hmm.
So Amazon absolutely does affiliates,
Hmm.
and maybe it does work, but I think that only works for the big companies. It doesn't work for the like mom and pop blogs, because you make $100 every month,
Yeah,
which is probably not worth it.
probably
Like,
not. But I mean,
yeah,
most of the people, like, not everybody can make a living doing this. A lot of people do it for love anyway. Like, most of those mom and pop blogs are making $0 right now already.
yeah.
But I don't know. It's hard to say.
I would love for the mom and pop blogs to be making enough money to survive.
Yeah. Do you have a, well, paying every, if you're not giving anybody a, oh, so you're saying you'd, like, is Valve willing to pay mom and pop
No, I don't.
shop?
So let's take Valve out of this. I haven't seen many. Uh, I don't know. Like if you want something really niche and obscure and you don't know it, I don't agree. Like you had
Hmm.
mentioned that you're already probably buying those games, but how do I find
No,
out about those?
that's true. Like, how do you, there's unpopular genres. Genres come in and out of popularity too, is the other thing.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. And how do you surface, like, I think in a way, typically what happens is one large game comes out like Cuphead, and all of a sudden everybody's like, holy shit, this is awesome. What is this? What's a shmup? And then all of a sudden everybody's finding out about shmups that had no idea that a shmup
Right.
existed, right? So in a way, it typically comes from content, not the storefront. I don't really have a solution for that.
Well, why couldn't it come from a storefront?
No, it hasn't happened. I could.
I don't know. Like Pandora does a really great job of, oh, you like this song. Semantically, these other five songs are related, and therefore you find these, even if they're not popular.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, there's an algorithm for like recommending stuff to you on Steam, right?
Yeah, I don't,
I've dove through that. I used to do like because you get like the card if you like click through the 10 fucking recommended games or whatever, right?
right.
Like done that. They kind of have that already, right?
Right. So you say you have done that. You no longer do it.
Thousands. Well, it's because I'm not sad and wasting my life. Or that was back when I was.
Gwen Frey, you have to be sad and wasting your life to play indie games.
No, I haven't played a game since March. That's just reality. Like, I'm just busy right now. But like, and usually, like when I'm, usually my typical state is, holy fuck, I have too many games to play and not enough time. So if I'm in a place where I'm just like, no, maybe, like, then usually I'm very bored, right?
Yeah, fair enough. So you're, yeah.
But that's what I meant by that. I didn't mean to say that I'm like done with games. But where is it going? Yeah, I mean, they've got a recommendation algorithm already.
Yeah. I don't like, so let's take it to Netflix. I don't like most recommendation algorithms. I think Pandora does the best job. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, any game store. I don't find many games that I like or movies that I like or what have you. So maybe that's a problem. Can you solve that?
That you don't see much on Netflix. I think the real problem there is everything on Netflix is crap. And I think that's, here's an interesting way that I see the market going. Like, what if we reach a point where, I mean, Microsoft has said they're trying to be the next HBO, right? And well, they stated at one point, like, if we had a choice between being Netflix or HBO, obviously we want to be the HBO. Like, we want the premium thing. And they said that before they bought up a bunch of companies.
Yeah.
And like, they want their vision for Game Pass, if you read through their stuff in the past, has been like, we want Game Pass to be like more like HBO, premium, amazing, good games, right? And now Epic is paying for exclusivity, and I think we both know there's a lot of people paying for exclusivity in a lot of places. What if Steam becomes the place where games go after they've already run through other places for 2 or 3 years? Is that a bad thing? Like, what if Steam is the place, like, what do you put it? After prime time, the going direct to Steam is like going direct to video. Is there a fear in Valve that could happen? I'm not saying it could, but I mean, if we move to a world where most consumers are not buying games, but are instead buying subscription services to these other things,
which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know how scared I am of that either. But like, I mean, it's definitely a fear. I guess this is a different conversation, but I feel like money enters the industry in big waves. Typically at the beginning of a console generation. This one's specifically bigger because there's new people entering the console space. But a lot of money enters the industry and everybody spends their money in a year or two. And then like there's no money for 3 years.
Yep.
And I feel like we've seen that happen before. And then like new sexy thing happens, new console, whatever. And then it starts again, right? So I think we are in the middle of the boom, and I think there's going to be like a couple of shit not getting funded for 2021 through 2022.
Yeah, but like I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was the pivot in the conversation, though.
Yeah, no, I like it. We should here. We should argue again at some point. I should go because it's my anniversary of my wedding. I should probably not be talking on a podcast. I want to disagree with you on something, but you're being very sensible, so I can't say that you're 100% wrong. But I would say I disagree with you that paying curators would surface much more than is already being surfaced, because curators are so very rarely paid anything worthwhile unless you're like the wire cutter who has a bazillion subscribers. So I wonder if I think it's incumbent upon the platform to figure out how to make all these little wonderful gems of indie games pop somehow. That's my job.
I want to stick a thought into your head.
Stick a thought.
The biggest reason why I think curators would be good for indies is because if you, as a curator, sell like say you're streaming a game on Twitch, and you make a bunch of sales, nobody's going to buy that game twice. Now if you're getting a cut of the sales, you're incentivized to switch games, which moves you through games quicker.
Okay.
So I think if I would argue that things like what Epic is doing is a great way to surface indies, because it's what it's going to do is it's going to encourage people to play a variety of games rather than one game over and over and over. Because people aren't going to be able to. People can't buy League of Legends if they already bought League of Legends. I guess they can buy skins and shit, but like games that aren't free to play.
Yeah.
You can't make multiple sales of the same game, but you can sell multiple smaller games, which is why I think Epic's move for the whatever creator program thing, I forget what they call it. I think it is actually really good for indies. It's my hypothesis.
Let's come back and test the hypothesis.
All right, enjoy your anniversary. I don't know why you're here, Ichiro.
But it's a very lazy day and the baby's asleep, so thank you for having me.
Wait, show the baby. Or is that too creepy?
She's in the. Hold on a second. They're like, everybody wants to see baby pictures, right? That's exactly what everybody's here for. I will say something. If anybody on your stream does have kids, there's this great thing called the SNOO, which is a robotic bassinet, which will rock your baby for you. And it's let's get an Internet of Things thing. So it'll
is that your baby? That looks like a stock photo.
Well, it's like I put the, but it listens to your baby crying, and depending on how much your baby is crying, it will shake them, and it kind of looks upsetting. And it's like, my daughter's head is going to fall off, but no, it's still on. So
okay.
And I don't even get a cut of sales for advocating for this device. So
no, but
maybe you're right. I should get.
I'm concerned, like one small bug in that software, and your child is. Never mind. You know what? I don't.
No, you're right. My child would be dead. Here, if I can share a link that I actually. This is no secret that part of my Valve work is based on this. I don't know if. I don't. Straight jacket swing, robotic internet. You can actually go to like the other side of the planet, hit a button on your phone, and start the baby shaking. I'm curious, like you already know about micro trailers, but like I think that instead of having human curators or algorithmic curators curate things, we should put games into a format that you, the gamer, should be able to look at a bazillion of them and say, oh, I like this. I want to investigate those. Like you walk into a clothing store and you see a bunch of clothes and you're like, oh, I like these 5 shirts. I'm going to try them on.
Not everything is showcaseable in a GIF is the problem.
I disagree. Maybe
like,
that's, yeah.
I know like a lot of the games they're doing really well right now are showcaseable in a GIF, but I think, what's a good example? Lucas Pope's last game. Do you think a GIF would have sold that?
100%.
Shit. Okay.
Have me on your show again, and I can argue with you why I think that is, or not. Oh shit! Did we get disconnected? I can't hear Gwen. I don't know if Gwen can hear me. I'm gonna sign off. All right.
Is that working? Oh, that is working. Shit, what the hell? I don't know what that was about. Sorry, I thought he was crazy. I didn't realize nobody could hear me. My bad. Well, that was unexpected. I thought I was going to stream development today. Sweet. Uh, yeah, that was good. I haven't had like a chat like that since we stopped doing the podcast. By the way, we will continue the dialogue box next week. And for the people that showed up, that was not planned. Ichiro just kind of like called me, which is cool. But yeah, hi. And we're back. Well, now what? Should I work on games? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get a soda, mentally reset, and then we're gonna work on the scene here. Or we'll talk, one or the other. But I think I need a soda. I'll be right back. I saw an engine. I was reading it a little bit. The Alt F4 comment. Well, now what? Guess now we work, huh? So, before we were chatting with Ichiro, I had recorded a scene. Let me make sure you guys can hear me. I'm getting very paranoid about this. Oh, I should fix this. It's enough of looking at me. Is it usually like there? I feel like I want the lines to line up. That's better. I don't know what the solution is to exposure for the indie developers other than content creators. The games I've been buying lately is because I discovered them through content creators. Yeah. I am very excited about Epic's program to pay content creators. I do think it's a good idea. I think I don't know. I think I said a lot of my thoughts on that already. A lot of indies I know strongly believe in curation from the storefronts, and I'd say that's probably the biggest possible mistake. Well, it would be great for me and for American devs who are reasonably well connected, but I think curation is a mistake. I think curation tends to lean towards people who are connected more than necessarily the best products. But there's just a lot there. I don't... If I'd known he was going to be here, and if I'd known that he was moonlighting for Valve, I would have like thought of a list of things that Valve could do better. Because that's a fun thought experiment. I mean, if I was in charge of Valve, what would I change and so forth? I think they've been on top for so long. I think they're, as much as I think, I'm not going to shit talk Epic Storefront, they gave me a bunch of money, but I mean, obviously there's flaws there, but I also think that Valve's storefront looks dated, looks like something that was made in the 90s. Just stylistically. And I think a way that, personally, I like the idea of allowing other people to have kind of affiliate storefronts, because I do think that's a way, that's way in Valve's playbook, right? Like letting the community manage things. It goes back to like their Greenlight program back in the day and stuff. I feel like that's well within their wheelhouse of like, I don't know, that sort of thing. The pottery that goes up your butt. Yeah, he kind of let that one go. That was interesting. Make a great game, show me a nice GIF on Twitter, invite me to your alpha, make sure it's not bugged when I test it, and then I'll buy it. Yeah. It's hard to know exactly what to do, and I think it's different from game to game. And I think a lot of being in this industry is scared. Like, I think it's funny and definitely true that Ichiro is scared. And Ichiro's, like, been in indie forever, right? Like, he is, his games were some of the first ones on the Steam storefront. He was there back during the old days. You're talking about creating a mini storefront, kind of like what Discord does now. Discord has developers create their storefront on their own Discord channel. Really? Should look into that more. I don't have a Discord. I just feel like there's so many things that you should do, right? Like you should be on Twitch and Twitter. I don't even know if you should be on Twitch. In reality, this is probably the thing I do that reaches the least number of people. But you should be on Discord and so forth. You should be on all these things, but I don't know when you fucking make your game if you're on all these things. I feel like you just need somebody full-time doing this almost. And I feel like if it's not the devs that are doing it, then you kind of lose that connection with the audience. It's hard to say. And I think part of the reason why I personally shy away from Discord is because I don't feel like it's opt-in. Like, I can send out a tweet and that's just me broadcasting a thing. Or I can decide to stream and it's like, all right, I've decided that for the next 3 hours, I'm going to be available, right? Whereas Discord is, I have a channel that other people are pinging me and I'm kind of feel like I'm obligated to go on there and reply. It's similar to like getting emails or something. And so for me, just, it feels like adding a larger extra burden. And I think a lot of this stuff is like, you do the things that make sense for you and for your game. I think a lot of community building, like a Discord specifically, is huge if you're doing a multiplayer game. In general, I think almost all community building is more important if you're doing a multiplayer game. And I've personally, like when I think about the kind of games I want to make, I don't know if I really... Like, you have to keep in mind my background, right? Like, we made a survival roguelike at the Molasses Flood, but before that, and again, like, that's not my favorite genre. And before that, I worked on BioShock Infinite, and I do prefer games that have some sort of narrative or some sort of soul to them, that have some kind of that are generally single player. Like, I don't play a lot of multiplayer games. I do love strategy games and that sort of thing. I do love highly systemic games, but like, I don't play Civ because I like the Civ multiplayer. In fact, I think it's I haven't played the newest multiplayer, but Civ 5 multiplayer was a serious drag. Like, I didn't like it at all. So I don't know. William Cheer has a Discord. He also has playtesters. Hey, Weez, I saw you were talking a couple times in there. It's good to see you, man. And I politely said, I don't make a game that takes 7 years, but I probably disagree with this 5 years. No, that's interesting. I do think I like William Cheer a lot, and I think he's pulling it off, and I think he's the exception. I think he did it through sheer fucking force of will. Because no, I don't think your first game should be a 5-year project. And to be fair, I don't think he intended for it to be a 5-year project. I'm pretty sure he made it pretty clear he intended for it to be a very quick project. It was just mostly, I don't know. I mean, initially I would say there was probably ignorance there, and then at some point it's either gumption or some shit. Like, I don't know how he stuck out as long as he did. But it's going to pay off for him. Mark my words. Like, in his case, it'll be good. I think that is an exception, though. Though there is another side to that, right? Like, another thing I said is there's a boom and bust to how games get funded, and we are in a... If you spend a really long time making a game and you keep your costs low while you do it, you can kind of hold out until you get to one of those times when people are, funding everything left and right. Like, right now, there's a lot of money being thrown around left and right. So that could be a strategy, I suppose. William Cheer is making a game called Manifold Garden. We've actually shown it here a couple times. It's like a first-person puzzle game. It's really cool looking. I dig it. One of the most wanted positions in Montreal at the moment for indies is a community manager. Yeah. It's also the one they're willing to pay the least for, right? And it's, like, not fun. And I think, I don't know. Yeah. It is more important probably now. Though I do feel like there's different kinds of indie, and there's definitely the very small art house indie where you are part of the product in a way. I don't think I'm there just because I'm not, like, famous enough. But, like, there's definitely something to be said. Jonathan blows a bad example because he's too famous. I don't know what the good middle ground is. Like, there's something to be said for, like, as soon as you have a community manager, you've got a layer between you and the devs. And there is something to be said for those games where you feel like you're talking to the dev. Maybe if I can't think of an example, maybe it's bullshit. But, like, I wouldn't want a community manager talking to me about Manifold Garden. I like that William Cheer streams it. You know what I mean? It makes it artisanal. It makes it, I feel like there's a human there, You're a curator for him? Yeah. You're, what do you call it? You're a true fan. You're like one of his diehard fans. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. I think we are at a point right now where the future is incredibly uncertain. And I do think that there's about to... I mean, it's no secret that a lot of money is being dumped in the market right now. Between, like, the Apple Arcade announcement, the Stadia announcement, and the fact that, like, several consoles are being dropped. Like, there's just a lot of money being thrown right now on the table, and that does mean that, like, starting in, like, 2021, there's going to be very little funding for stuff. But isn't it different if you make the game as a sphere with multiple key people? Yeah, that is definitely different. So, you know, it's just been a while since I've been a part of a game that had a, like, that I was in love with a game that had a community manager. I think that's part of the problem. And that might be because I don't play many multiplayer games, but I think about, like, Tanya Short definitely has a community manager. She's a great example. For the life of me, though, I don't know the name of her studio. Like, I'm spacing on it. But yeah, like, does Zach have a community manager for Zach-like games? Does, like, when I think of Cultist Simulator and Weather Factory, I don't think of a community manager. When I think of Steve Gaynor's games, I don't think of a community manager. I just don't think of games where when I think about what I'm personally kind of into. Kit Fox, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, she's an interesting one. She definitely runs her business in a very like, she's a good human. I like her a lot. Do I know the game Flotsam? I've definitely heard of it. Plus Epic's Mega Grant is a whole lot of money. Yeah, that's true. Though I suspect the Mega Grant will go to all kinds of things. Like, you have to keep in mind the I'm sure that'll go to a lot of games. I'm sure it'll also go to other things. Like, the Unreal Engine is being used for self-driving cars. It's being used for film. Like, and I think they're interested in people that are pushing the engine in other directions as well. So I wouldn't, every time I've looked in the past at the grants, like, a quarter of the project are games and 3/4 of the projects are other things, it seems. Tech backends for things, that sort of thing. Flotsam. I swear I've heard of this. Congregate Publishing, huh? It's exciting. I mean, I don't know anything about it. The community management in Flotsam is centered around their Discord. One of the founders and artists kind of took the role of community manager on. Yeah, that's pretty typical. Ninjin's on 6 Discords with playtesting, most of them under 5 man. And yeah, you need to waste a lot of time if you want to feel connected to your audience. Yeah. I don't know. In a way, there's a comfort in it too, because it lets you know that I guess William Cheers streams. Imagine if he didn't, though. Like, if you're just sitting somewhere working on your game for years, you have no idea if the market's interested or how to project if you're going to make any money at all, which can be really stressful if you need to make money. And I suppose having when you're indie, you're kind of hungry for any sort of information sometimes before you launch, especially if you're spending years in a project, right? And so having some metrics, having some indication in a way can be comfort. And a Discord channel with a certain number of people is a form of comfort. It's a metric, it's some sort of guiding light. So I can definitely see it just even from that perspective, right? But yeah, like, I'm one person, man. Like, I can't run a fucking I could, I guess, do a Discord as well, but I mean, I'm having a hard enough time just doing, like, the screenshot Saturdays each week and making the game and streaming once a week. You know what I mean? I wish I could go back to having. I want to go back to doing the damn podcast. I did it. It's hard enough to do the things you enjoy. I think the other part of it is I've reached a point now where I'm working every day for, like, it's easier to talk about the times I'm not working than the times I am. And when you reach that point, having this, throwing on another task, any task, even if it's small, just seems so daunting. So the idea of like, okay, so I have to start up a Discord and this is a recurring thing that I have to check every day, and I've got to like fucking make I don't even know what's involved. Probably not much. Just like make channels and make sure people don't get angry. And I guess I've got to like promote some people to manage it or whatever, like moderate it and stuff. And why though? Like, I'm not going to give people access to the game. I'm making a 5-hour puzzle game, man. Like yes, I have QA testers, but I don't need to have a Discord in order to have QA testers, you know what I mean? So, Hyperball. I'm working on a mobile puzzle game, and I'm not really sure how important community building is for our game, since I don't imagine our audience is interacting a lot in community around it. Yeah. Like, and I know the examples, I'm going to choose famous examples, which Ichiro will call me out on. But like, Inside didn't have a fucking community manager. Yeah, but, how do you get noticed for that first game is a huge question mark. I don't know how you do it. Maybe the secret is Discord. Though I do feel like you're more likely to have a successful Discord if you're already kind of famous. Most of the time when I start freaking out about this stuff, I remind myself that I started working on Coin. The goal was not to make any money at all. I was going to live on savings and I was going to have fun. And I was going to ship it pretty soon. And then I got enough money to make the game. And extend my runway a little bit. And so if this game doesn't sell a single unit, it doesn't matter. I'm making what I love and I'm happy. And that's like the only way to stay sane. And so anything that's like stressing out about the fact that maybe nobody ever plays it or whatever is trying to figure out, like, is it better to have a Discord, like, counting the number of obsessing over your metrics on these different platforms, because it'll just drive you crazy. Like, it just will. I don't think Discord has made any game popular. Discord's advertisement for the source system is literally sell to your super fans. Yeah, so Discord's for your already existing fans. Since you only work 2 to 5, 2/5, it's hard to put the time into keeping a community active. I'm not convinced you need a community because if you're making a mobile puzzle game, unless it's highly replayable, I don't really know what a community gets you. But I am not an incredibly successful indie developer, so I'm probably not the right one to talk to. And I don't know if anybody really knows for sure. I feel like every time I go anywhere, like I was at PAX East and I was talking to different people and Mike Rose was there and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to do I don't think I can do his British accent. I'm not even gonna try. But he's like, yeah, I come to these shows because I'm a publisher and my developers expect me to, but it's useless. It's a giant waste of money. You should never do shows. Meanwhile, at the same time, I'll go talk to Ryan Clark and he's like, shows are so important to us. We just invested a shit ton of money into building this giant thing to go to shows because for us, it's about building the brand and people seeing our name over and over. And like, everybody's just got wildly different philosophies, even if they're working in the same genres. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all thing. You could just post specific stuff about your game. Yeah. I could do a lot of things. had it my way, if I had more time, I'd make trailers. That would be my thing. Like better gifts and more trailers. I think that would be fun. More being like, I don't think I'm gonna... I think I said on stream at one point, like, no matter what, I'm not giving up the launch trailer. I'm gonna do that myself personally. No, I'm giving that up. Like, I'm just not gonna have time to do it. I believe shows are important, but mainly for the PR. I believe shows are incredibly important, but I go to shows for different reasons than most people. And it's not to me necessarily the fans, though I do enjoy that. And I disagree with Ichiro. I do think there's times when showcasing your game at a show like PAX is extremely valuable, mostly when you're working on UI, UX, especially for your on-ramp. Like, it's really good for testing, do people immediately pick up the game, and how is your on-ramp? And it's good for testing your UI. I find shows are, even for like a puzzle game's probably not the best thing for a show, but I do find that shows are really, really good at just that. The other reason I like shows is because how do I put it? If I'm showing a game, I have an excuse to walk over and talk to... For one thing, it's fun to talk to other devs that are showing the game. Like, working in the Indie Mega booth was really fun, and talking to the other devs. Another thing is it's useful to talk to publishers and business people, because they're working the show too. And I don't... Like, I've got... Ichiro pointed it out, and it's true. Like, the Epic deal saved me. I'm funded for Kine, but, like... The way that is structured, just the way things are, means like I'm definitely going down to just me, and I'm living on savings next year, right? Like, and I've got to probably make a prototype pretty quickly and get the next thing funded. So for me, it's useful to talk to publishers. It's useful to have a couple of ideas and funding things in my back pocket, and seeing some people from Annapurna twice a year so they know I exist is useful for me. That's actually why I go to shows. It's actually not for the customer-facing stuff. It's for the other side. Am I outsourcing porting? Yeah, I am. I'm not outsourcing it very far. I'm outsourcing it up the street to my buddy. An old friend of mine owns a company called Disbelief. They did some preliminary work, and they quoted me some stuff for the porting. It looks like it's pretty easy. You're looking for recommendations? I can... yeah, we can take that to DMs. Like, I think Disbelief is really, really, really good, but also very expensive. Do you know what I want to do? Yeah, I know what I want to do right now. We'll see what happens. Because there's... So... This was supposed to be the first game in a series, and this ends kind of where I wanted the next game to pick up. And so what I would want to do is work on the next game, but I don't want to say that yet, because I want to... Like, if this game is a total flop and I'm really sour on it, then I'm not going to... Like, if this game is not received well, if people hate it, or they think that I think it's hilarious and cute and charming, but if people are like, this is stupid, the writing's awful, go die, then I'm probably not going to want to work on it again, right? So we'll see. You never know. And the truth is, at any given moment in my life, I've always had a really clear plan for what I was going to do in a year, or like where things were going. And my life has never followed the plan, like, at all. Like, up until I moved to Boston, I think I lived in I physically moved apartments every year for like a decade. Like, I don't know how to explain how hectic things are, but like, I've just come to terms with the chaos. And so I never obsess over the future anymore in that way. But yeah, like right now, what I would love to do is to work on the sequel after this comes out. And I do have ideas for that, and I have kind of like started some stuff. Kinda. And like at this point, I would have to rip out the movement system and really like go down to the foundations, because there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of... I'm not a programmer. This wasn't very well architected. Didn't really know what I was making in the beginning, and it's time for a pretty massive refactor. So I think as soon as this game launches, I'm going to create a separate version of the game in source control and immediately start ripping everything out down to the studs, and then start building the next game. Unless it's completely hated. And then I don't know, we'll figure it out. That writing is stupid, go die, 8 out of 10. Yeah. Can you see yourself going back to AAA? I don't know, man. Don't really want to right now. Like, I don't know. Could be fun. We'll see. Like right now, right now, obviously not. Like, because right now, this is the most fun I've had in my life, and I want to keep doing it. So, but I know what happens when you launch. So we'll see. Never say never. And there is something fun. Like, I do enjoy working with other people. That's absolutely true. I don't think I would go back to, well, I'm 100% sure for the most part that I would not go back to just being an animator. Like in a studio. I would want a different role. I think it's kind of weird, but my backup plan, like in the back of my head, I was never worried about how things would go because I always thought no matter what, I always have a job at Riot. Because Riot is very aggressive in their recruiting. How do we put it? Yeah, I don't know. I always thought I'd go back to Riot, but they're having a bit of a bad time right now. And the reality is I don't, like I've had offers from them before in the past. Like they've always offered, they offered significantly more money than Irrational did. And I went to work for Irrational anyways, because at the end of the day, I just didn't want to work on a live product that's already shipped. Like at the end of the day, the game is always way more interesting to me than the money. That could change. Who knows? But like historic, like maybe I'm getting older. Maybe I should get a real fucking job. But like usually I'm paid pretty well and life is pretty good. And so long as I hit a certain bar, I'd rather go for a game I like and something I want to work on. And live products that have been out for years and years don't sound like a lot of fun. So my backup plan, I think I'm pretty sour on at this point. Did I get addicted to coding? Do you think this is coding? I do think visual scripting is pretty cool, I will admit. Hey, Russia. I'm glad you liked it. Thanks, man. So you're not a software engineer. Does that mean UE4 makes it possible to make a full game without needing a software engineer? No coding programming needed. It depends. Like, yes. You can make a game, right? Like, you can make a game and you can ship it on the Unreal Engine without a software engineer. That is accurate. You can make an executable. I think... Obviously, it is very helpful to have some sort of foundational knowledge about how things should be structured, because visual scripting is still kind of programming, so you can't go in as like, I don't know shit about shit. Like, it's useful to be a technical person. That's very important. And if you want to... I wouldn't assume that you could ship on a console. I knew I wasn't going to be able to ship on console unless I got a programmer. Just that has enough headaches that you're going to want a programmer. It's pretty much just as hard once you're really into it. It's something non-trivial. Yeah. Kine has bugs. I don't know how bad it is because nobody's told me what the bugs are. And because I've said this before, I believe you make your content, because there's lots of massive shifts in content later on. Like at some point, especially in the like 2 months before content lock, when things are changing rapidly, right before you lock everything down, I don't think it's a good idea to go in and fix all your bugs, because things are optimizing prematurely is a mistake. So there's bugs in Kine. And they scare me, and they're largely in the undo system. And yeah, there's times when I wish I had a better programming background, because maybe there wouldn't be so many fucking bugs in the undo system right now. But, and that's probably a pretty big thing that could bite. That's like a known risk in the back of my head. Are those headaches for console because of performance? No, actually, I'm least concerned about performance, because I feel like a lot of performance issues you can fix as an artist. Especially in Unreal, the tools to determine what your performance problems are, like you have those tools, right? And yes, it's possible if you make your entire game in Blueprint that you have problems in the game thread. but those are most likely logic problems, which just goes back to you not being a programmer, not so much issues with Blueprint being slow. At the end of the day, your code is not the thing that makes your game slow these days. It's almost always content. So no, it's just reality of like, for one thing, you're not gonna make a console build until you've installed Visual Studio. So like at a minimum, you have to install Visual Studio. So that's like step one there, right? And then there's, I don't know how to explain what it's like to get a game onto console. Because in all seriousness, I don't really understand it. From what I can tell, I don't know, man. Like, you turn in a circle three times, you sacrifice a goat, you throw a chicken over your shoulder, and you draw a pentagram on the ground in your own blood and you hope. Like, I don't know how consoles happen. Like, you just call a programmer. Like, they just don't work until somebody hits somebody's gonna compile something and be like, oh, we just had to flip some bools and shit in the code. Like, there's just shit you can't do. Hey, Stay Thirsty, what's up, man? Talking about console dev. Noah guy. Call a programmer. No, I don't know. Maybe I could. Maybe I'm afraid of consoles for no reason. This could be a holdover from UE3. I could just be childish. But I swear to God, like, I've never just installed a dev kit and had it work. And I'll admit, I haven't tried to install a dev kit yet for Kine. I've got some dev kits I could install and try it on my own. But, like, rather just pay a programmer in all seriousness. Like, I've just been burned too many times. Stick pottery somewhere. Yeah, that was an interesting pottery conversation. UE4 holds your hand through a lot of it? I'll bet. Like, I bet they do. You know what was cool was I was looking into another one of... some of this week has been me thinking about all the ways things could fuck up and I could miss my deadline and panicking about them and then alleviating my fears. One of them was localization, because I did promise, like on the Epic store, you'll see there's some promises were made with respect to how many languages I'm coming out on. And I have no idea how to localize anything in the Unreal Engine, and it turns out it's really fucking cool. Like, it happens basically automatically. I don't know if you've looked into this, but everything, like, there's this text class, and I knew that I was supposed to use that, so I did, and that's all I knew. But I went into the localization window, they have a GUI for it now, and everything that uses the text class in your game is like, you can just hit a button and it poops it all out into like a fucking document, and then you can just get that document translated and bring it back in like the same format. Like, it's easy. Localization is so easy, it's unbelievable. So long as you're careful, you always use text for everything, which I did, and you don't do anything stupid. Like, don't write, like artists will sometimes make signs or something and they'll have English on the textures. Obviously don't do that. Don't have blood or anything like that. It'll get you in trouble. So I think this is going to localize, knock on wood, but I think it's going to be pretty easy, hopefully. I'm allocating a weekend of my time, plus like a day of biz dev to figure out who's going to localize it, pay them, and so forth. People scared me about C++, and that engine will crash all the time. Still waiting for the crash. The only tricky localization bit UE4 doesn't handle super well yet is non-standard character structures like Arabic. Nothing handles Arabic super well from what I can tell. Yeah, I wasn't going to use Google Translate. I did set aside some money for Loc. I do feel like I can do that. I can do a little bit better than that. There were a couple of puns in the game, and I've specifically like scripted up. Like, I have a line, and then I have a different line if it was a pun, so that I can keep all my puns in English, but I still have it work in other languages. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see. You mentioned you worked on UE3. Is this your first time in UE since then? If so, what was the transition like? No, my last game was on UE4 as well. And the version of UE3 I used, so I've been spoiled because the version of UE3 we had at Irrational was heavily modified. In a way, they actually pulled out a lot of functionality because Kismet was popular but wonky, and we had some very some designers with a lot of creative problem-solving skills that could get into a lot of trouble using Kismet. So, at Irrational, the engine team did pull a lot of power out of Kismet. They also integrated, obviously, Fmod. Everybody integrates Fmod, and they integrated, in the animation side of things, Morpheme. So we had, on top of the fact that there was a lot of homebrewed stuff for the logic, for like we customized that engine somewhat, like quite a bit. Where can I go with this? Anyway, the transition from UE3 to UE4, most of that was learning Blueprint. The user interface remained largely the same. There's a lot of improvements, but largely it was learning Blueprint, which was honestly pleasant compared to Kismet. So I'd say it was a good transition. Though to be fair, it's hard to say because that transition did happen years ago, right? Like I was on UE4 pretty much immediately. Oh guys, I'm pooped. This is more talking than I'm used to doing on a given day. I think I might. It's kind of my first solo developed game. Yes, though I can't call it that anymore, right? Like I had started out as a solo game. I intended to finish it as a solo game, but I fell in love with it, and then I got funding, and now it's not a solo game anymore. Now I'm leading a very small team. Like I've got the initial plan, like I looked at the budget I could get and what I wanted to make, and my initial plan was 4 artists for 4 months, but it's looking more like I kind of bubbled up to 4 artists, and then I bubbled back down to 2. So, because it was supposed to be like I only had enough budget for 4 through the end of this month, and I kind of like pulled back on that. So I've got 2 to 3 from now until the end of June. The goal is to completely finish the game before the 3rd week of June, and then I'm leaving on vacation. I'm gonna go to Glastonbury, so I will be gone, which is good. I need like a good deadline. I think the biggest problem I've had lately is that I don't have a firm deadline, and so I'm getting like, how do I put it? Part of it is just I've been working a lot of hours for a long time, so eventually you hit diminishing returns. Like there's just fatigue. Like it's a lot easier to check Twitter, and it's just fatigue. Like it's hard to explain. And the jobs I have to do aren't varied enough to keep me interested sometimes. Like I've got to only do kind of very specific tasks sometimes, specifically the managing the artists and stuff. So anyway, yeah, I've just been getting tired. I've been checking Twitter a lot, and I think it would have helped if I had a firm deadline. Like it would have helped in a way if Elmore didn't tell me I didn't need to be content locked at the end of the month. As soon as he said that, I was just like, it was kind of nice because I took a breather, but it also means I've slowed down. Like my foot's not on the pedal the way it used to be. At least I feel that way. Objectively, I'm still getting a crap ton done, but I just don't feel like I'm getting as much done as I could. Mostly because I'm checking Twitter too much. A month feels long. So So I'm hoping to release the game in June. Oh, good God, no. No, I'm going to be, when I say done with the game, I mean done with the game as far as content goes. I'm going to go on vacation in June, and then I'm going to come back, and then I begin loc QA bug fixing until launch. And porting, obviously. And ratings and so forth. Like, so ideally, content lock was going to be at the end of this month, which means it's a phrase from Irrational, stop shaking the jello. No new features, no big features, nothing big changes, right? And then you're in polish until some point in time where you lock out all the artists, which in this case is going to be kind of end of June, right before I go to Glastonbury. And then you move into the next phase, which is once everything's locked down, only bug fixing and very important things get done while your programmers port the game, and you send out the game for ratings and so forth, and you get in your loc. This matters a lot. Firm deadlines that can't move are things like script lock. So if you're working on a narrative game, you need to have your script. Content lock can be kind of fuzzy, especially because at a larger studio, you'll have this thing where it's not like you can lock all content at the same time, but people expect that you should be able to. So designers want to work right up until the last day of content lock, but everything that a designer does has kind of knock-on effects, specifically things like animation, and then after that, sound effects. Generally, the people who get fucked most at any given studio are sound effects and effects people. And they need the time to come in and like do their tasks after everything else is done, just because it happens last. Like sound effects have to be tuned last, because if an animation moves something, now all of a sudden the sound is out of sync, right? So the sound effects happen last. And the reality is, unfortunately, sound effects and VFX can add a lot of problems to the programmers when they want to port the game. And so there's kind of like content lock ends up needing to be a really kind of a rolling thing. So nothing high risk changes after June, for instance, or like the end of this month, April, May, which I think I think I'm done with any high risk thing. I think I've put in the last feature. Now it's just finishing, right? I'm going to bring in Mitchell for some last minute sound effects in early June. And then I plan to be done with the game as far as content goes before I leave for Glastonbury. And then after that, we move into like I said, QA. I have to figure out how I'm going to do that. On the Flame in the Flood, we hired a company to do QA. I think I'll probably look at the same company again, though they were kind of expensive. QA is particularly important if you're a small dev going on multiple consoles, because I'm one person. I can't possibly test every TRC violation and crap that's going to happen on every console. So that's just the thing I got to do and so forth. Yeah. Yep. So that's kind of the roadmap. And if I don't have all the content done before I leave in June, then I really start rethinking about the launch strategy, and then I make some calls that are really hard. So I should really be done with all the content by the end of June, which means I should be done with the script and implementing all the script by the end of May, which is one of the things I'm working on right now. It's all the narrative cutscenes. Say what you want about the Flame of the Flood, but we were on time and on budget, because I do know how long these things take. Ichiro is right, though. Part of this stuff, if you decide to schedule out... I mean, there was some things baked into the statements I just said, right? Like, no, stop shaking the jello after a certain date. And that does mean, like, if you don't have a finished good game, you have to make a choice. Either you say fuck that and you shake the jello, or you accept that maybe that fixing that feature isn't worth it, or how do you put it? Anytime you play a game and you see a bug in that game, the first thing you'll see online is people are like, why didn't they QA test this? Why didn't they test this? In reality, if you've encountered a bug, there's a near 100% chance the dev team saw that bug probably months before it shipped, or if there's a critical flaw in a game's design, the dev team knew about it. They made the option. It was just fixing that or changing that was too high risk, because fixing a bug often introduces a different bug, or sometimes bugs exist because they have to, because if they didn't exist, something worse would happen. Anyway, right now the plan is, yes, PC and console at the same time. That's my goal. I don't have any reason for that, though. And I don't have any, I don't have any deals with anybody other than Epic. So, which is good and bad, because I also don't know which consoles I'm coming out on yet. So Fallout 76 and all those bugs. Well, I mean, I can't speak for every single dev cycle, right? But there is definitely a point where bugs get triaged, and they decide which bugs are they're the bugs that are necessary to fix for the game experience. And then there's especially visual bugs. They're like, does this hurt the game experience? If not, fixing it might be too high risk, you know? And a call is made when that happens. And especially in a game like Fallout 76, if Kind slips, I mean, that's on me. And I have to have one really hard phone call. But that's it. If Fallout 76 slips, millions of dollars of marketing spend are wasted. They bought out the cover of Game Informer for a specific month when they were launching. You know, the amount of money spent on the game is like a quarter of the amount of money that was spent on the marketing for the game. Slipping is not acceptable in AAA at a certain point, and they had hit that point. And yes, so Ichiro was talking about how indies need to be willing to take risks and change things later in the game. That's so not acceptable in AAA. At a certain point, once the marketing spend is down, you just can't. Will you release the game on your console? I don't know which one that is, Stay Thirsty, but sure, fuck it. Yeah, I like the Switch as well. We'll see. I'm not allowed to announce anything, mostly because I've got... Yeah. Just various legal shit going on, seemingly with every fucking console right now. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about. I haven't trademarked the name Kind yet. That trademark's been in progress. It just takes 6 months to do, and I started in January. So, I don't have the right to, take the name Kind on... Specifically for this one, that's the one thing I probably can't talk about. I don't have the right to the name Kind on the Xbox. That's one of the headaches in my list of bullshit, list of shit that's keeping me up at night. That's really low on the list, but it's still on there. Release Kind on the GameCube. So anyway, and for various legal reasons, I don't know who has the name Kind or why, or it could be something that somebody locked it down for an app, for the fucking phone or the Windows Store. I have no idea. I put some research into it. I've got no idea. Somebody somewhere in Microsoft's ecosystem locked down the name Kind. Which is interesting, because I'm not really keen on the idea of changing the name unless I have to. So we'll see. We'll see. All signs point to the trademarks going through. It just takes time. But, yeah. It's just another thing in the list of millions of things. Yeah, there's other shit. There's other shit you can't talk about. Anyway. I'm pooped. I'm gonna roll out. This is fun though. I'm sorry I didn't do any work. Is that right? Secret shit? It's not secret shit. It's boring shit. It's litigious, so I'm not allowed to talk about it. That's all. It's not interesting. I mean, are you interested in the trademark status of kind? It's just lost. Yeah. I'm sorry. I think I said it when I first started streaming. I hope nobody's here to learn. Like a long time ago when I started streaming on Twitch. Don't be here to learn, man, because I only stream when I'm not in the mood to work. Of course, Russia. Ask anything you want. I'm in a pretty fun spot, which I probably won't be for the entirety of my career, where I can pretty much say whatever the hell I want. Like, honestly. Like, I can be honest, which is really fun. Because when you're working in AAA, obviously, one wrong word will A, get you fired, and B, could harm the company. And there's people who are trained to talk to, you know, the world and the press and stuff. And so by speaking out, you're kind of infringing on them. So if you're in AAA, you're not allowed to speak out. And if you're like a business owner with a lot of employees and shit, you're not really allowed to talk about a lot of stuff going on in the industry. But I'm neither. So, and I've been around a bit. And I love, like, there's a lot of great stories, and the industry is fascinating. I love talking about it. So, if you ever have any questions, just ask. That's what somebody with super secret shit would say. Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, Stay Thirsty. I don't keep secrets real well. Not really. Not real good at it. But everyone but Pitchford is trying to talk. Yeah, I know. I recognize that name. He's in some heat now, right? Which one was he? Well, you know, I could think of a handful of people off the top of my head that maybe should shut the fuck up. Something about Twitter. Really, I don't know if it brings out the worst in people or if it's really good at making people look really bad. Maybe both. I mean, part of it is you're not going to have any kind of like deep, meaningful conversation in the space of a tweet. Yeah, Twitter, I mean, there's so much good that happens from Twitter, but it really does bring out the worst of people. It's the Gearbox Borderlands 3 CEO. Alright, later attack button. Yeah, I can't keep track of every fucking controversy. I can barely keep track of like the ones that matter. I want to let you guys talk though, so what I want to do is host somebody. Let's start looking at who's online. Nobody.
Pass though.
Nobody's online. Poop. Polydolphin, you're here a lot. Is there anybody you want me to host? Somebody, whoever is the first person to say the name of a streamer, I'll host that person or raid them or whatever. I don't want to talk about the riot walkouts. I don't know much more about that than is public, right? Yeah, I'm already here, dude. Like, what is there to say about the riot walkouts? I know exactly what was put on the internet, just like everybody else. Yeah. Guess it's a good thing I went to Irrational in hindsight, right? Because I almost went, like, they were definitely always my backup plan. Mostly because they pay really, really well, and because they recruit really aggressively. Is nobody else you're interested in streaming right now? Shoot. Alright, maybe I'll just stop streaming. I'm sorry. What time is it? Yeah, I gotta go. It's hot in here, and I am pooped. Talk to you guys later.